From our Sea Point studio is criminologist and author Dr. Don Pinnock. Dr. Pinnock, thank you very much for being our guest here on the program.
Hi, Leanne. Morning.
I mean, you saw this insert that was compiled by Griselda Lewis. You know, this is we just focusing in on Gauteng or here in the Johannesburg area, but this is nationwide. I mean, this is happening all over the place. Would you say?
It's happening, and for a particular reason that people are not sufficiently talking about. Gangs are a small part of a much bigger problem. And that is, you know, of the 9 million people who are unemployed in South Africa, 5 million are aged 15 to 24. And 3.5 of those are not in work, not in school, and not in training. That's a lot of kids in the street. And what are they doing? Half of the kids who start school don't make it to matric. And I think I saw a statistic the other day that nearly 5.5 million young people are in households where nobody's working.
Yeah.
So we're in a situation where the kids have got nothing to do. And as we know, teenagers with nothing to do cause trouble. That's almost their job. So gangs, I started working on gangs for my book Gangtown, and I suddenly realized that what I was doing is I was looking at youth rather than gangs. Gangs are a smaller part of a much bigger problem in this country, which is youth with nothing to do.
Yeah, and that is where all of this comes about. I mean, is when you've got, and you take a walk around any city here in Johannesburg at any given day. If it is a school day, no matter what it is, you will see the youth out of school on the streets, I don't know, finding things to do. And at the end of the day, this is the kind of stuff that they get involved in. So as you're saying, this is a bigger issue, and an issue that needs to be, I imagine, addressed at a level of from education, from unemployment, you name it. I mean, how do we get to grips with something like this?
One of the problems of dealing with gangs is that, as you say, it's a multi-leveled approach to do something about it. But fixing it is not rocket science. You know, one of the problems is we have to fix the education system. I think for most kids, education is boring. I don't think we're teaching it in the right way. I think we're teaching from the neck up. A lot of kids would prefer to have skills, hand to brain skills, rather than brain to brain skills. That's one of them. But the other problem is that if you have large numbers of families who are stressed, you know, if you have a mother who's not getting enough nutrition, she might be distressed, she might even take drink or drugs. That's going to have an effect on her fetus. That's going to have an epigenetic effect. And that's one of the odd things of my study in gangs. I was ending up looking at epigenetics and trying to figure out how that early prenatal damage could result, and it has been shown to result in higher risk behavior of kids later in life. Sure. And of course, the absent father problem is perennial. A third of all young people are being brought up in a single parent family in this country. That's enormous. Fathers are not coming up to the plate.
You know, something very interesting that one of the guys profiled in Griselda's insert said was that it's better to be in a gang because you're targeted if you're not. Is this a sense that's moving around communities, that you need to actually associate with a gang to protect yourself?
There's a number of reasons why kids get into gangs. One is just to get to school. If gangs are very often territorial, often because they're selling drugs in those areas, so they defend their turf. And so to get to school through a gang area, you often have to join a gang to get to school. But if you look at also the breakdown of extended families into nuclear families, the breakdown of nuclear families into single parent families, gangs are also a family. They are where kids find support and security and approval and all of the things that a young person needs. So it's very difficult in many areas to stay out of gangs. They are the only thing in town. That's all that's going for these young people.
Yeah.
And in a way that's very sad, because a gang is not necessarily criminal. It's just a group of people hanging out with similar goals. But of course teenagers they can be really rough. So sooner or later, that gang's going to do something that is criminal. It might start fighting with another gang. Then you have tit-for-tat stuff. Then you get a murder. Then you have a problem. And once you've committed something that's high risk in your gang, you can't leave it because the other gang will get you.
Yeah.
So you really have to be in the gang and stay there to survive.
I mean, the reality is what you're saying, and it does make sense. It's just it's a sense of belonging. You need to belong to something. It's human nature. If you don't have a family, if you're not at a school, if you don't have activities to belong to, you're going to find a gang and feel like you're part of it. I just want to touch on the issue of drugs as well, because, I mean, I imagine, and you can see that this is a breeding ground for a lot of drug use, drug taking, and of course, which leads to more violent criminal activity. Do you find within these gangs that drug use is almost a done thing?
No, Leanne, we have a major drug problem in this country. The estimate of the illegal drug trade is 2.3 billion a year. We are in between the east and the west. The drugs are coming through from various directions, going out again to other directions. So we have a major drug problem in this country. And young people with nothing to do. Drugs are not, it's not the chemical that's the problem. And really this is what I've found, is that it's, people take drugs, addiction is another thing, that's when you take far too much. But taking a lot of drugs is all about sadness. It's about, drugs are a chemical hug. They're a way to feel okay in a time where you don't feel okay. So one of the solutions to the drug problem, and we have a really big drug problem, is the support around the kids, and that is the same kind of support we need for kids in gangs around feeling rejected, feeling, not having a family.
Yeah.
My solution is that we have to decriminalize drugs, all drugs. And that's quite startling, because there's a drug problem, so you decriminalize them. But if you do that, you collapse the syndicates, you collapse the gangs, you start to be able to take that problem in hand and manage it through state systems, the way we handle smoking or alcohol. It's not good to get drunk, but alcohol isn't illegal, so we have systems set up to deal with that.
Yeah.
So, we have to sooner or later decriminalize drugs.
Doctor, I mean, just very, very quickly, I mean, let's close it up on this comment, because I think we're going to get a lot of people wanting to talk about this, the fact of decriminalizing drugs here in South Africa. Let's draw a comparison between South Africa and the rest of the world. I mean, obviously, we have a very high level of gangsterism. How do we look in comparison to the rest of the world? And taking your issue of decriminalizing drugs, has it helped in other countries bring down the level of gangsterism?
Look, gangs are a phenomenon. They're an urban phenomenon. They are all over the world. America has its gangs. China has its gangs. Japan has its gangs. It's a youth phenomenon at a certain stage with certain levels of income and ability to get things. But the drug issue is. I was looking around. I thought, well, we've got to decriminalize drugs. Am I completely mad? And I looked around. I found Portugal. Portugal decriminalized drugs in 2002. And the European Union thought, whoa, there's going to be a drug crisis in Portugal. Drug use has dropped massively. It's the lowest drug use in Europe. And the reason is that if you're caught with if they're decriminalized, they're not legalized, you can have 10 days of drugs, but if you have more, they'll take you in. And they don't arrest you. They sit down and say, what are the troubles in your life? What are the problems that make you take drugs? And they deal with the problems and not the drugs. And that's been a huge success. So yes, there are other countries that are dealing with it.
Yeah, listen, interesting interview. Thank you for your views. What is the name of your book, Doctor?
It's Gangtown.
Gangtown.
It's just out now, and it's. I hope it's the last I'm doing on gangs. It's the third book on gangs. It's got solutions in it.
Excellent. Let's try and get a copy of that one. Dr. Don Pinnock, author of a book called Gangtown. He's a criminologist as well, and talking to us about this scourge of gangsterism here in South Africa, and of course the drug use. Do you agree with decriminalizing drugs in South Africa? Can that help? Just one issue to get you talking on this Monday morning. Write to us at Morning Live SABC. Let's take a break. News after this. Stay tuned.